burnout reveals an identity problem when we think that it's actually revealing a workload problem. And you're basically operating disconnected of who you really are, but how do you get back to who you really are?
You're listening to the All-In Wellness Approach podcast.
This is your wellness, your life. So just one question.
Are you ready to go all in?
Hi guys, it's Sarah behind the scenes and welcome back to the All In After Show. Thank you everyone that voted on Instagram. We had a very decisive vote from the collective and this show now has a new name. Very excited. This is where we're going to pull back the curtain on the All In Wellness Approach podcast, taking a deeper look at the stories behind the episodes, the questions from our listeners, and the conversations that keep unfolding long after the microphones turn off. Today, we're unpacking episode 2, Finding Balance After Burnout, where Amanda sat down with Aubrey to talk about the intense pressure of aviation, the health toll of chasing success, and the creation of the body maintenance manual and the All-In Compass framework. Let's get into it. All right. So we filmed this episode in Longview in your airplane hangar, Aubrey. It was my first time in Longview. And we had a gals weekend where we just created a whole bunch of content and of course, filmed this episode. Amanda, what stands out to you the most from recording this episode with Aubrey and being able to interview her?
I think it's fun having her be in her own element, just letting her be relaxed in her boss babe mode, just in the hangar with the airplane and the hot air balloon there, just being in her space, letting her kind of lead in the setup, and how fun for us to just get to play around in a space that you and I don't get to be in, and just kind of watching her do her thing is one of my favorites.
Aubrey, what do you remember from that day?
First off, I love hosting, to have you guys at my house as my guests and to be able to love on you and make you dinner. And Sarah, get to know you more on a personal level because you still are a very new and budding and very strong friendship for me.
Mm-hmm.
Was amazing. It's always exciting to bring people to a hangar because airplanes are neat.
Cool. All right, we're going to go now kind of into our listener questions. You talked a lot during the episode about burnout, and I think there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I don't recognize that I'm approaching burnout until after I'm already there and have to kind of pull myself out of it. Do you have a way, really either of you, that you are able to tell I'm getting close to that line?
Most people, especially for women, just living in that burnout, like just on fumes, is what we're taught. It's just part of it. We have to do all the things. The first part is acknowledging no medal at the end of the year for the most tired, hardworking person, most burnt out. There was a little quote that I had posted the other day, and I wish I could have said it more eloquently. You don't get a medal for just running on fumes all the time. The first part is acknowledging, okay, this is not how I have to function or need to function, and there needs to be a better way, I think is kind of the first thing that helped me, because it's just this badge of honor. I'm just going. I can push through this. I've got a really strong threshold for burnout. Explaining yourself through it and giving myself benchmarks, right? I'll just keep running on fumes until when this happens, then I can rest. When I do this thing, then I can rest, and just keep pushing it off, I think is the first part for me, because I still struggle with this where I'm like, it's cool, we're good, I'll keep going.
What about you, Obs?
You know, for any high stakes job, not just aviation, but first responders and police officers and oil field workers, anything that's a high stakes job in particular, which is why I can relate with aviation. Burnout doesn't look like collapse, essentially. It almost looks like hyperfunctioning under stress. And it really just takes one small trigger to expose it. We are trained and brought up to overfunction and identify so strongly with our jobs as doers that we don't even realize the burnout is happening. If you want to figure out what the indicators are for burnout for yourself, the first couple that I could bring up are what burnout looks like for anybody, not just a high stakes job. It can be somebody simple as a parent or someone being a caregiver for a loved one. Like, these things can burn you out and you don't even realize it because you are just living in it so strongly in the day to day. But the first thing would be something like emotional blunting, which is you just end up with the loss of empathy or patience towards that person. I get emotionally blunted with my dogs. Coda's hurt right now, and I have to keep him confined because of his leg. And, okay, baby, you gotta stay in your crate. But when he gets hyper and jumps, I know he's hurting himself, so I'm gonna yell at him. Coda, you need to stop jumping. Ooh, I'm sorry. I just emotionally blunted all over you. The next would be physical depletion. Something as simple as headaches, insomnia, GI issues, your rising caffeine tolerance, and irritability.
Most of us don't even know that we're dealing with burnout until we're burnt. It's like roasting a marshmallow. This is fine. Just another second in the flame and then it'll be perfect. And then it's like the whole marshmallow's inflamed and you're like, all right, I'm burnt out.
I like the analogy.
And nobody's ever really sat down and been like, okay, here are the 5 signs of burnout. These are little subtle things that occur. Disconnection, performing tasks perfectly, but feeling detached and robotic. Sarah, you could resonate with that in your job. You're just going through the motion because you have to do it and you're not mindfully doing it. That precursor to potentially experiencing burnout. And genuinely, the erosion of joy, something that once felt like it gave you purpose, is now transactional. And so one thing we always talk about with us 3 doing this podcast and doing that AWA collective as a whole is we don't want this to feel transactional. This will forever feel purposeful. And when it starts to feel transactional, it's time to take a step back. And that's how you keep high quality and high emotion in it. And then the final 2 indicators that I would say are really tailored towards those high stakes jobs and not just people in general is cognitive fatigue. So in aviation in particular, if you're experiencing in the cockpit while you're flying slower reaction times, small decision errors, or trouble processing routine checklists, that is the high-end severe burnout because you could easily make latent failure and catastrophic issues could occur from that. And then the final one, which is very much derived from an aviation term, is loss of situational awareness. Zoning out, missing small air traffic control calls, over-fixating on one task, which will minimize your safety margins.
One sign that I'm thinking of that you didn't mention for myself is I'm not normally a procrastinator. And when I'm burnt out, I become a procrastinator. Or when I'm approaching burnout, I'll start to be like, that's a tomorrow task. And normally I don't do that. I really physically feel these things. So like I'll wake up nauseous, for example, or have a hard time eating. My appetite will change, all those types of things.
And those are 2 big ones. I think for me, I get a little culmination of maybe not all of these that I listed, but I'll get a physical depletion if I'm really dehydrated or I have a headache. Amanda's like, did you drink your electrolytes? And that helps. But obviously your body's homeostasis is off, right? And then obviously the emotional blunting, I'll be very quick to snap at somebody personal to me if I'm feeling it at work. What about you, Amanda?
For me, it's a little bit different where my threshold, and maybe this is just part of my way to explain it, and I do need to do better with it. I've been really trying and paying attention to sleep just because naturally in the fitness industry, most people train before work and after work. So you've got really early days and really late nights. And trying to recognize that, okay, I don't have to function that way, but I'm usually, when I'm at my peak, which is sad that I function not there all the time. So when I do get rest, I'm like, whoa, if I could function like this all the time. And when I'm just really sharp, when I'm in those moments of a lot going on, I really have to take it hour by hour, where normally when I'm not burnt out, I'm good at like a bunch of spinning plates in the air all at once, where when I'm close to burnout or in that burnout phase, I'm like, nope, we're just going to let the rest of those drop. And this is the main one. And then we'll pick that up in the next hour. Trying to understand how you function and creating fail safes for yourself. And then each time that you do get burnt, like we talked about the marshmallow, knowing I can't do that anymore. What led up to that? What were my little patterns that I do when I'm in the moment of burnout? Like when the call light comes on that says, hey, you should check this, right? Check your oil. Otherwise your engine's going to blow. Like not waiting until that engine blows to be able to be like, okay, what are my natural lights that turn on that are starting to warn me? And I feel like it's a little different for everybody. The pattern may not always be a headache, or it may be where you've just lived in headaches so long you don't even notice that you have them anymore. It's trying to figure those pieces out. I don't know what that looks like for every person, but I think it's taking it back to then the basics of let's go through this checklist. Let's go through the all-encompass. Have I updated my maintenance manual? If I don't even know where my baselines are, then how am I supposed to navigate figuring out what's supposed to make me feel good if I don't even know what normal is for me or what it should be?
Something that we had discussed in the episode that actually didn't make the final cut was a checklist, speaking of that, Amanda, that I think is the coolest thing in aviation, and it's the IMSAFE checklist. And that's a good preventative maintenance tool for anybody to use that can be transcribed, not just for pilots and high stakes professionals, but a good self-assessment tool that everyone can use every day. So, Sarah, have you ever heard of the IMSAFE checklist?
Yeah, I remember us talking about it when we filmed.
Okay, so each letter stands for something, and the first one is illness. Obviously, a pilot's not going to fly if their performance is impaired by an ailment, like cold, flu, anything like that. But a burnout tie-in to that would be if you keep coming down with a frequent minor illness, if you keep having some sort of flare-up, then obviously your immune system's depleted. If you're slower to recover, you're obviously not giving yourself time to physically recoup. Or if you have constant inflammation or immune suppression due to like some sort of chronic stress, then part of that IMSAFE checklist, your illness is very much apparent. M is medication. You know, pilots can't fly on certain medications. There is an FAA approved list, but it's like no sedative, no narcotics, things like that. Again, the burnout tie-in, if you're constantly relying on caffeine to function, that's still not a medication, but it's a supplement, right? If you're using sleep aids to shut down and you can't get natural REM sleep, or if you're needing stimulants to get through your day, or the big one for a lot of people, especially in our age, is using alcohol to come down. If you're using alcohol as a suppressant to relax, and that's a constant, then there again, and that's an early burnout sign.
One of the funny stories from that weekend was we all went for ice cream in this wonderful little place. We're sitting chatting, talking about ice cream and talking about how so many people have different ways of just coping and navigating life. And I was telling a story of talking with a coworker, and they were like, "What antidepressant are you on?" And I was like, "I'm not on an antidepressant." And they were like, "You're just raw dogging life?" Yeah, I guess so. I've never thought of it that way, but I guess I'm raw dogging life. And it was just had the three of us cracking up in the middle of an ice cream store.
I lost it because that was our best, my most favorite inside joke that we've developed together.
And I think to be said, antidepressants are, Western medicine is amazing. They're needed for a certain type of thing, but I think if they're used more sparingly, then that's your sign that you're close to burnout. If it's not something you're needing to take on a daily, but people will take certain things to be like, oh, I'm in a high stress situation, I have to take this, or like alcohol or any coping thing that helps people feel less angsty or less stimulated by their situation, then that's kind of your signal to be like, ooh, okay, things are off. The hard part is adulting makes us have to push through that. And I think it's getting better out there, but going through this IMSAFE checklist, if you do this more regularly, then maybe we wouldn't have to rely so heavily on those. So just figuring out how to cope. We all need to figure out healthy coping mechanisms that are, yes, guided by physicians, but also taking a step back and being like, if I'm using this a lot, then maybe there's something deeper. And sometimes that means that the coping mechanism is actually to have the conversations and seeking therapy and figuring out what those healthier coping mechanisms are. And going through, if you can create a checklist for yourself that you do weekly, then maybe realizing like, ooh, okay, this is going to be a tough week. So what's the next part of the checklist?
Stress. It comes down to stress. You know, for pilots, it's acute stress, chronic stress, and understanding the difference between both. Acute stress would be like a fight with your spouse or a major work conflict. Chronic stress is going to be more like financial pressure, job insecurity, family strain, something like bigger and longer. But the burnout tie-out for that, which most of us have experienced at some point in our lives, we are human. Emotional numbness or snapping at small things, feeling always behind, overreacting or underreacting to anything, I guess. And then the mental fog is early burnout signs. You can't differentiate between a small problem and a big one. So if everything feels heavy, that's a pretty strong indicator that stress on the IMSAFE checklist is one of your key indicators. A is alcohol. This is I'm kind of grateful to see that there's been a huge decrease in alcohol consumption as a whole in the United States. Since COVID, there was such a huge spike with everyone doing nothing, so they were just numbing out at home. But obviously, we have an FAA rule, and to make it the funny parable that we have is 8 hours bottle to throttle. You can't have a drink 8 hours prior to your flight. But what other people fail to break down is that there's more to that regulation, or 0.04 blood alcohol content, or any signs of alcohol in your system. And that's including dehydration, being some variation of hungover, not properly getting a good night's sleep. If you're drinking to cope or drinking to sleep, sign of burnout. The last two, F, is fatigue. One of the biggest contributors to pilot error worldwide, and obviously a huge contributor to burnout as a whole for people, is fatigue. Fatigue can be aggravated by your sleep quality, circadian rhythm, physical depletion, cognitive fatigue, or fatigue that's treated as impairment. And the burnout tie-in is if you're just constantly running on adrenaline, which, Amanda, in your job, you can run on adrenaline when you're teaching at 4 a.m. and then you're teaching at 8 p.m. and you don't have a typical 8-hour workday. Your 8-hour workday is stretched between a 20-hour work window.
It's interesting how each coach functions a little bit differently. John can spread his out. John's my husband. Can spread his clients out throughout the day, where I'm like, I want to chunk them all together because then I can just run. I joke that I have two speeds, 1,000 miles an hour or parked. If I'm going, let me just back to back to back. But as soon as I get a second to pause, then inertia catches up with me and is like, okay, you're parked for a while, whether it's adrenaline or just stress and workload patterns.
Yeah, and the final one, I feel like if you get to E on the IMSAFE checklist, you are not even just identifying or experiencing burnout, you're burnt out, and it's emotion. And I know everyone has emotions. Emotions are just energies in motion. And emotion can ground you in aviation, so to speak, because of emotional instability that can compromise your judgment. So for example, which this is a very personal one for me, my father passed away in 2016. He passed away the morning that I was to fly home on a trip. My husband very much has been well-versed in how to handle situations like this with me as a pilot operating an aircraft with passengers on board. He told everybody in my family, he protected me. He said, do not post anything. Do not call Aubrey. She will be home in 4 hours. Let me handle it. But please, dear God, do not reach out to her. He made sure that I stayed in the zone to do my job. And then as soon as I landed, he handled me. And then he also let my employer know that I was going to be taking a couple weeks off. And I was able to go through the grieving process of losing my parent. So yeah, the emotional part can definitely affect the safety side of a profession, but the burnout to tie into that is if you're emotionally feeling detached or resentful towards people or places or your situation, if you're feeling hopeless or overreactive, or truly if you're numb, if you're feeling nothing at all, you are burnt out and it's time to address it.
I think erratic emotion too, whether it's anger or crying, or Sarah and I talked about this, when we get super angry, you either rage out or you cry because you can't rage. And so when you feel like you can't control your emotions and they're just erratic and swinging left, right, and center, we have emotions all day, but they usually come in little waves and they're manageable and we're aware of them. But when they just take you on a ride, then yeah, you definitely shouldn't be flying a plane because the emotion's flying, not you.
There's a couple times of my life where I wish I had the IMSAFE checklist because it would have really brought probably things home. So at what point when somebody is approaching burnout, do you think a person should stop trying to deal with it themselves and go to a third party, somebody like a therapist, to help them develop tools to come down from that?
I think just like a workout, everybody should be working out, and you work out your body, you should work out your brain, and there's stuff going on in there. Feelings are meant to be felt, and unless you handle them and work through them, I think just regular workouts, regular maintenance, people should see a therapist. Doesn't mean you have to see them every day, but you should have one in your pocket, especially for when the IMSAFE checklist is showing that you're on E. To me, I think regular workouts and regular therapy sessions are recommended.
This is an extremely taboo topic in aviation, and I am going there. Is counseling allowed for pilots? Yes, according to the FAA 2023 Mental Health Update for the Aero Medical Examiner's Guide. Sorry, girls, I'm about to get real formal on you here. Talk therapy and counseling are fully allowed and do not require reporting. Yes, you don't have to report this. Pilots, if you listen to episode 2, you have to get a class 1, 2, or 3 medical every year to make sure that you're physically fit to fly. If you're going to counseling, you don't have to report it unless they involve a diagnosis of a psychiatric condition. Obviously, that's going to affect safety. So, for example, why would a pilot go to counseling? For marriage issues, for life stress, for burnout, anxiety, grief, or personal growth. I mean, even if you just want to go see a life coach, it's not disqualifying. Pilots are humans, and we are doing superhuman things. We are literally hurling a tube of metal hundreds of miles an hour, thousands of feet in the air. We are organic, we are breakable, we are human. So why would we not seek the guidance? If you break your arm, you're going to go to the doctor to get it fixed. Why are you not going to counseling when your marriage is in peril?
I feel better knowing that my pilot is seeing a therapist, because then they're handling their stuff and they're leaving it on the ground. They're not taking it with us in the air.
Yeah.
Yes, I would rather, if my pilot was going through a divorce or something, that they were seeing a therapist. Please and thank you on behalf of all flyers.
And I feel like divorce is one of the biggest, so it's another terrible acronym in aviation, but it's AIDS, aviation-induced divorce syndrome. There's so many, I don't even know the statistic, but a lot of pilots get a divorce. Hello, if we went to counseling and therapy for it, do you think maybe the divorce rate would go down a little bit and marriages would actually stay intact? And the spouses would understand each other better? Anyway, what I am going to follow this up with, though, because I chose to go there, is I'm going to explain what does need to be reported for pilots. So if you don't want to hear this one, fast forward it about 30 seconds and I will get off my high horse after this. But I'm about to get a little...
You ride that pony.
Particular. Title 14, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 67, which prescribes medical standards and certification procedures for pilots. Diagnose conditions such as major depression, bipolar disorder, psychosis, severe PTSD, personality disorders, or manifested by overt acts, which is, and I quote, or what also he needs to be reported is psychotropic medications, including SSRIs, benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, and mood stabilizers. Obviously, if you have to be on some sort of personality or emotionally stabilizing antidepressant, then you have deeper issues. Potentially, I mean, with respect to that, I know some people genuinely do get diagnosed with things like this. That may be hereditary. Obviously, if it's hereditary and you're going to be pre-diagnosed and you're not going to be on the flight line to begin with, you're not going to make it past your very first physical. But if something like this, like depression, for example, because it's an easy one to pick on, if depression develops, don't you think if you handled like your IMSAFE checklist, or you actually handled yourself and took care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, you may not even have to get to that point where you have to go see a psychiatrist. That's really the big difference right there. So psychiatric conditions affect judgment behavior, and if they're requiring a psychotropic treatment, then you're grounded. Okay, I'm off my high horse.
You did a great job.
Thanks.
You had that feedback from, again, that's what this after show is about. The All In After Show is we put out an episode with a topic and people have questions or want more clarity. people asked you like, hey, I'm also in aviation. Can you bring more clarity to what is exactly allowed? And you also had leaders in the field who were like, hey, you need to let people know this is what's allowed. So for those who needed this information, you stay on that high horse because they need it. Otherwise, they're just sitting there in fear, like, I really would like to see someone, or I'm seeing someone in secret and I pray that no one finds out. But they can get rid of that stress, which is what this whole thing is about, right? You can be a little bit more safe. Go through your IMSAFE checklist knowing you can see a therapist, or you don't have to hide that you are.
And here's what floored me was that feedback and that request for us to shed light on it actually came from a chief pilot over a very large operation. And they were like, can you please just somebody say it? Somebody say the thing in the room that you're not supposed to say. Just all it takes is a little bit of research. Just like we talked about our body maintenance manual, like put just a tiny bit of effort into yourself, into knowing and understanding yourself. Same thing, wherever you're at or whatever's causing you to burn out, put a little bit of research and education into it. Perhaps your company does offer some sort of program that can help you with counseling or therapy or drug and alcohol abuse, things like that. But you're worth it. Again, you are so worth investing your own time and efforts into. If you would do it for your spouse, if you would do it for a loved one, for a best friend who you see suffering, why, if you're suffering, would you not do that research and seek the help for yourself?
I'll say for me, a blocker for a long time in going to therapy was I thought I had to make the commitment to go every week. And you don't have to do that. That's not the kind that I've really ever done or enjoy, although I don't really enjoy therapy. It's hard work. It's really hard work. I like going and being like, I have this particular thing or these particular couple things that I want to work on. And we hit those things really hard. And then I stopped doing therapy for a while and I used the tools that I learned and I put them into practice in the real world. And that's where I really test it. And then if I need to go back because the tools aren't working for me, then we go back because the tools aren't working for me. And if I have another thing then that I identify later that I really want to work on, so you can be really purposeful about it so that you're not spending as much time with a therapist if that's a blocker for you like it was me.
And that's beautifully said, because God might be the author of your story, of your life, but you're the narrator. So if you don't want to go, if you want to go once a month, if you want to just go once to see what it's about, and if it's not your jam, move on. There's other ways to heal, not just cope, but heal in healthy, whole ways. Starters, if you're listening to podcasts to make you better in capacity.
A lot of the barriers are financial for people. So figuring out if your company does help absorb some of that. And the other barrier is they're like, oh, well, I tried one and I didn't like that person. Did you marry the first person that you dated? Again, it's going back to that last post show. You may have to have a couple of dates with a couple different therapists to find the person who fits right with how you go about things, or you feel like actually hears you and understands you. Again, they're human too, and they're just trying to do their best, and you just have to find the best fit for you. Doesn't necessarily mean that that therapist was a bad therapist. They just weren't a good therapist for you. So date a couple before you figure out is your long-term therapist.
This segues us really nicely into my next question, which was about the all-in compass. When we filmed this episode, developing the all-in compass really felt like a revelation. And the more that we talked about it, the more we were like, yes, this makes sense. This is really clicking. In it, we very intentionally put faith as the very first step, kind of the foundation layer of the all-in compass. How has faith or any sort of kind of spiritual reflection guided you through seasons of rebuilding, whether after burnout or just rebuilding in general?
It's funny because I would like to say that it's always my first go-to. I've been in a season lately where I haven't even asked God to help with that. And it's usually something where I'm like, this has been plaguing me and why can't I figure this out? Because you're not supposed to. Leaning on God and asking for help is the only way I've made it through. And I preach this. If you watch the episode about me, I talk about it all the time, but I'm still human too. And just the other night I was laying in bed and I was like, I haven't even talked to God about this thing. I'm sitting here lying awake at 1 a.m. and I haven't even done the first thing that I should do, which is pray about it and ask for guidance and discernment in this area. And as soon as I did that, I at least had some peace. Doesn't mean I always get an answer right away, but I at least had some peace knowing like, this isn't for me to carry. I'm not supposed to save everyone. And so because I feel like I can't figure this piece out or save this person, it's not my job. I'm going to give it to the person whose job it is. And then I will follow when the instruction is given or feels like it is made more apparent. Faith is my foundation for sure. Doesn't mean I'm always the greatest at it. But when I feel stuck or burnt out, and I'm just running in circles and God is like, girl, sit down, let me handle it. I have to remind myself I'm burnt out and it's because I'm trying to do it and I'm supposed to give it away. It's not my job.
The big thing with faith is that, and still discussing and tying in the whole concept of like understanding burnout, is burnout reveals an identity problem when we think that it's actually revealing a workload problem. And you're basically operating disconnected of who you really are, but how do you get back to who you really are? In the beginning, God has always existed and God is number one. And so he created me. Why am I not putting him first and myself right after that instead of everything else?
It's much easier to be rooted in your faith when the people around you are like-minded. Do you guys have any tips or tricks for spiritually connecting with your loved ones? Aubrey, you talked about your daily devotionals that you do with your husband. Amanda, do you have anything that you do? Aubrey, do you have anything else that you haven't shared yet?
I think before that, Aubrey brought up kind of a thought in me with her last statement was in the beginning, God. And I think we get burnout when we feel like we control it. We have to fix this. I, me, we, instead of him. Realizing, okay, this isn't my control, and getting rid of that control issue helps at least pause the burnout and give that piece away. And then to connect, I think a lot of the time with my husband, my partner, people in my life, I have to remind them of that. Like, hey, I know that in most of your life, you haven't had anyone to rely on and you're still new in your faith or you don't have that faith, but this isn't for you to control. You can't control all things, and that's okay. That shouldn't shut you down. That should give you some peace knowing that's not for you to do. Set that down. That's not your job. You don't need to do that. Your job sometimes is to rest and to listen. Sometimes your job is to lead and sometimes it's to follow. And so when you feel like your leading is leading you nowhere, then sit down and wait until someone else, God, in our case, if you've got faith in your life or whatever faith that is for you. So I think that control piece, I'm reminding myself, reminding my partner, devotionals help, going to church regularly helps. Not that just once a week is enough, but having some sort of daily reminder that helps, whether you have the Bible or whether you have some mantra or an affirmation that reminds you that you don't always have to control everything and that there's a greater power working for your good. And sometimes you just have to pause and set it down.
And you've had to remind me of that a multitude of times. There was a point in my 20s where I remember my mom was like, Sarah, you're trying to swim in the ocean in the middle of a hurricane. You've just got to stop trying to swim and fight and just let it go. And I was like, I don't understand how to do that.
Your body will actually allow you to float and survive during this, even though that seems scary, but you're built to survive this thing. Even if you just sit still, you will float through the ocean hurricane where when we're afraid, we feel like we have to do. If we're doing, then we're going to fix it. And it just feels we have this, it's fear pushing us to have to do something because then we feel like we can control it instead of just giving in and being like, I'm going to float through this. I'm still going to survive.
Let's make it simple, not ceremonial. Something as simple as like, we're telling people pray, pray. The first thing I should have been praying first. How do you pray? Some people have never even attempted it. Some people had this grandiose image in their head that they have to go to a temple and kneel and pray and stand up, sit down and cross yourselves and all that stuff. Just have a conversation with God. God is within you. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is within you. Just have a conversation with yourself and talk your problem out loud, and God hears it. But spiritual connection dies when it feels like a chore. So make it simple. Small, consistent touch points beat long, complicated routines any day. I love to keep it simple. I would dumb it down even further to teach everyone the concept of micro alignment, which is exactly what Amanda was talking about. And micro alignment tools, just keep it down to one. There's one God. Let's do one thing. One breath when you're stressed out or in the morning. One breath with one intention, reset your spirit. One scripture or affirmation, my husband and I doing our devotional. One moment of silence before you react on your kid or your dog or anything like that. 1 minute of grounding on the floor and just standing there and washing your hands. Simple ways that I stay spiritually connected is habit stacking. This all didn't start overnight. I didn't just wake up one day and say, these are the 15 things I'm going to do, the 5 unique ways on how to connect with God, like we were talking about earlier. Very simple. My coffee time, 5 minutes with God. Doing my makeup and hair, I listen to 15 Minutes in the Word with Joyce Meyer podcast. When I commute, I listen to positive music only, whether that be Christian music or I don't listen to anything about heartbreak, alcohol. I got rid of all of that crap. When I feel angry, anxious, overstimulated, I do the pause and pray method. I wash my hands in really cold water and I pray. I pray over that flight, or I pick one extended family member that I haven't thought about in a while, an aunt, a cousin, and I pray for them. But washing your hands actually cognitively resets and rewires your brain. It's something about the cold water. I don't know.
Also, Jesus washed feet, right? Is there something about washing things away and cleansing and new slates, right?
I love that. Yeah.
When I struggle praying or when I know I need to be in the Word, but it's hard and it's either listening to music or I think it's just culturally, it's always been like, get up, turn the TV on, right? Because sometimes sitting in silence is deafening. And on YouTube, there's this Grace Oasis prayers, and there's a bunch of different ones. And it came up like on my YouTube thing on TV. And it shows beautiful, peaceful scenery with this lovely, they take you through the Word and then they take you through a prayer. And depending on what it is that you feel like you woke up carrying, there's a bunch of different ones where it's like, safety, carry me through this day. Start your day with God, like a bunch of different ones. Lord, make me a doer today. I know I need to get a lot done, like a bunch of different things. Even if I don't know what I want to pray for, but I know that I need to spend time there, then I can just go there. And it's not even me praying. I'm making my coffee. I'm still doing the things that I need to get done, but I'm echoing, okay, yes, that's how I'm feeling, but I couldn't verbalize it, or I didn't know how to start, how to pray for it. And so I can just repeat what that YouTube is saying. There's so many tools out there depending on, again, the first piece that you need to decide for you is, are you a reader? Are you a listener? Are you a seer? However you learn or connect, then choose that piece. And there's a bunch of different apps or options for you to find your way. And again, if it's not God, you just want to call it the universe, but just acknowledging how you feel and what you're hoping for the day out into the world, whether it's manifesting or that book, The Secret, it's there. And it's also you releasing what's not for you and asking what you're hoping for in and trying to attract that energy.
And what's beautiful is you're not changing your routine at all by watching that or listening to that on YouTube. You're changing the rhythm of your day, and your habits shape your spirit more than your intentions do.
Any other last minute thoughts about episode 2 that we didn't talk about?
Just that I hope that people start using some of these. You can hear us talk about it, and we've created these for ourselves. Again, the same echo is on here. We're going to show you our way. Doesn't mean it's the way. Hopefully it helps you find your way. Going through and making your own IMSAFE checklist and looking through the all-in compass, which is also on our Instagram. And if you want a deeper version of that, you can DM us, write a comment here on YouTube, or anywhere that you can leave a message to let us know that you'd like more information.
We really do want to connect with you. That's why we're doing this project.
Yes, because it's great that we have these for us. And again, you may not use every part of it, but if there's just one thing that helps you get through your day or have a little bit more self-awareness for something that resonated with you, we're like, hey, listen up, self. We realize that I'm not safe in this area and I'm experiencing these things. And so maybe we need to take a second back, and it's okay to ask for help. again, the faith-based part of all of this is that we were never meant to do any of this alone. So if you're trying to carry everything by yourself, that is your first thing to take from this, that you have us to chat with if you feel like you are doing life really alone. Because I know, especially post-COVID, a lot of people feel really isolated and alone. A lot of jobs now are still at home, which in some ways are great, but in other ways make people still feel really lonely. And even just loneliness can make people feel burnt out, even if there's nothing else going on. So connect with us. Let us know how we can help. We have more episodes coming out. So if you haven't listened to episode 3, that's my episode. If you're curious more on how faith has helped me through, I haven't gone super detailed. So hopefully in our post show, I can get a little bit more detailed than I did in the episode, but I think you'll still get a lot from that episode. And then we have some really great people who are going to be sharing their version of everything. So no, you're not alone. Ask us for tools. If you feel like there's something that we're missing, let us know, and we will try and either find a way to fill it or find a guest who can help us with that area to bring to you, because that's what this is about. It's not just us on a soapbox telling you this is how you should live your life. It's, hey, we want to be your wing women. We want to be your friends to help you know that you don't have to do life alone. Here's how we do things. Hopefully it helps you. Here's how we think about it, and be in conversation with us, and then it'll help us do better too.
I love that. All right, last question. What's in your cup?
Well, I'm a little fancy tonight.
Ooh.
It's just lemon water. Blaine got to go with me on a work trip to Las Vegas, and we stayed in Lake Las Vegas. And obviously the food was very heavy and rich because we went to a beautiful Italian restaurant. It's been 4 days and I'm still detoxing, so that's why the lemon water.
What about you, Amanda?
I was prepared for this. As you guys know, I love mint tea, but I have in my lovely mug, but I also brought it because it's like, oh, well, what kind? This time of year, run to Trader Joe's. It is my favorite. It is candy cane green tea, decaffeinated, and it's got this cute little polar bear on it, but it's candy cane. So mint tea, green tea decaf in my lovely mug, and always electrolytes in my water.
I'm running a little bit late finishing my very first Stanley. So this is just water. I'm almost done with it though. So with dinner, I'll have my electrolytes because I don't know. I feel like electrolytes do better for me when I drink them when I've had something to eat with it as well. So that's what I've got. All right. That's episode 2 of the All In After Show in the books. If something in Aubrey's story hit home, whether it's burnout, boundaries, or faith, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a review, drop a comment on Instagram or YouTube, and keep the conversation going. See everybody next time. Bye.
This episode is supported by Body Strong Boot Camp in Longview, Texas. For all of our East Texas listeners, if you've been waiting for a sign to take your next step, this is it. New members are welcome, and if you're interested, subscribe and comment on this episode. Your first class will be on us.